My name is Ashley, and I am a behavioral and medical rescue. This is our trainer, Bren, at Complete Canine Care. We wanted to do a video today to touch base on an Ontario trainer that had a death, a dog pass away in his care. We just wanted to kind of take from that experience and have an open dialogue and video of information for the public to talk about like what to look for when wanting to use a training facility or placing your dog in training, as well as what to expect, what can happen, pros and cons, and all that kind of conversation just to kind of have more education and information available for people that are looking for it. What kind of training do you offer?
Yeah, so we offer primarily behavior modification. So dogs that are, human reactive, dog reactive, they have zero manners with the owners, mouthing, biting, off-leash recall, as well as, advanced obedience, protection for sport applications. So we do a lot of that. We even train deaf dogs, like one of yours, Winter, and blind dog. So we kind of cover all of that. And one of the big things you want to look for when you're looking out for, a training facility that does boarding trains is that, you want to make sure that they're licensed by the township. They'd have their insurance as well, but licensing is very important.
So, how do we properly screen or vet our trainers and the facilities that we're looking to send our dogs in?
Things that you'd want to do is making sure that the trainers have worked with cases like yours before, have a good track record. They haven't been here for 6 months, and this is the first time they're doing it. Unfortunately, in today society, a lot of people watch a little bit of YouTube and think they're a trainer, and then they start charging people a lot of money for training, yet they've never actually got, even worked with a dog with these kinds of symptoms of whatever the behavior may be. So they're really not qualified to do it. And sometimes a lot of people handle dogs they shouldn't handle. Some trainers are good, and we work with some other trainers that know this is their limit that they can do, and anything past that, they refer to us, and it's always appreciated. But someone that knows their limits definitely is some what you want to look for in training. Again,
And I think that's important to touch on that not all trainers can offer the same services, and
no,
knowing if that trainer's services fits the behavior that your dog is having to make sure that you're getting the best outcome. Because
yeah,
any trainer can take your money, but they could potentially screwing your dog up more if they're not qualified for the behavior that your dog has. Something to touch on is when you're looking at dogs that have a little bit more advanced behaviors like human aggression or dog aggression, there needs to be a history or credibility, whether it's other trainers vouching to say, yes, this person knows what they're doing. You can't throw those kind of dogs with just anybody. You have to research to know, like, is this person actually qualified? And there should be some kind of history to show that somewhere,
yeah.
whether it's a page to show it or other trainers or like work. Like, obviously you have an active page so people can see that, but if you have a trainer that comes forward that says, hey, I take reactive dogs, but there's nothing to show that history, then more than most likely that they can't handle those behaviors that they're advertising they can take. The other thing too is do you promise 100% results,
No.
or your dog will be 100% trained by the end of the week or by the time you pick your dog up?
No, you can't do that. I wish you could, but it's a living animal. I can get a dog to a certain point, and I could have 5 dogs come in for dog reactivity, and all of them will have different levels of it. You have the genetics of the dog, you have the environment, you have the handling. Those can be different things that can contribute to that dog, and every one of them will have a success rate. We can probably fix them all. That's not an issue, but it's up to the owner to maintain that. And some success rates will be, I'm like, okay, your dog's pretty easy. You just need to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to be golden. Some other ones, like, you need to do X, Y, and Z. You cannot mess up at all because your dog is more of an issue, like, especially with human reactivity. So you need to keep on its case. And that depending on who's holding the leash, because sometimes I have to try to train how I would train someone, because I can train, the one partner this way, and then the next partner of the same dog I have to train a little bit different because their handling skills and just their presence with the dog can fluctuate. So it's up to me as a coach to try my best to coach each one to be successful, because at the end of the day, I'm here to make sure the dog's successful, so I have to make sure the humans can do what they need to do to be successful. But
But the
if the
bottom
owners
line of that
don't
is
if the
But the
owners
bottom
don't
line of that
follow
is, sorry, Sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. It's okay. I think basically what you're saying is the bottom line is the owners must follow through with the training program
Yes.
afterwards in order to be successful, and that's 100%. I can train a
Yeah.
dog. I can show the dog perfect. I can give it to the owners. They can follow 1% of what I said, and the dog might be great for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden everything comes undone. Or the dog tests for the first week or two, but they keep on it, and boom, they're perfect, right? So, yeah, it's always up to it. As it is a living, breathing animal, it's not a mechanical device like a car where you change a tire, you got a new tire.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to understand when they're looking for training, that training is not a fix it. What you're doing as a trainer is laying a foundation. And then the owner, once you tell them what that foundation is and show them, they have to continue it. So if someone comes to a trainer with the mindset that fix my dog and then when I pick it up, it's going to be perfect, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for.
Yeah,
Because if you're not going to put in the work, then your dog's going to go back to the exact same habits and the exact same environment. And you're in the exact same spot and you didn't get anywhere. And
yeah,
we see this in rescue too. Like even when I send my dogs to you, or even if they're with me, because I take them after they come to you, like they're perfect. But if I put them in a home and they're not doing the same thing that I'm doing, they're going to get a different result. So
100%.
we have to maintain what goes into place.
Yeah, 100%. It has to be maintained, and every dog will have a different level of management too. And so, for you when you're placing dogs, it's very hard because I've worked with rescues for 11 years, and you meet the person, they put on their best face, and sometimes it goes amazing, and then sometimes it doesn't, and it's a hard thing. So I applaud you for doing it because it's not easy, screening out people, because you never know.
No, you never know. And it's harder also with behavioral dogs because we do invest so much and we do have a training team and we have so much support and it's like we set these dogs up and it's like we're giving that trust when we're handing the dog over to say like please continue this. Like we did all the hard work.
Yeah,
Just continue it. And these dogs thrive, but sometimes you do get the odd one that, might, fall more in love with the dog's story and then feel bad for it and be like,
yeah,
"Oh, but I want to do this." And then things start to slip. And then when we have those follow-up phone calls to say, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're saying, well, I'm struggling in A, B, and C. And then we're like, okay, let's go back. Let's go
yeah,
back to where this started and how we can make sure this doesn't continue.
yeah,
Right. Something I wanted to touch on because I've actually seen it where you've turned down clients. And
yeah,
I think it's important that just because somebody has money and they're offering to say, hey, take my dog, if that dog's not going to fit your program or if you feel like the owner's not going to keep up with it, I've seen you say, I don't feel like we're the best trainer for you. And I think that's really respectable as a trainer to know your limits or to know what dog's going to benefit in your program to say no instead of just taking their money
yeah.
and not having that good relationship or being able to help them the way that they want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've had that before, and so it's my reputation on the line, and I care about the outcome, and I hope the dogs are going to be successful. So I'd rather not spend 4 weeks training a dog, and the owner is not going to do anything, but then be unhappy or mentioned, "Oh, I went to training, and he's not any different." It's like you literally did nothing. You haven't
Yeah,
even taken
and the
him
other
for a
thing
walk.
too is when you're also taking in dogs with extreme behaviors, whether it's human aggression or dog aggression, even though you're trained and you can handle them, you're still at risk. Like there's
Uh,
still a risk when dealing with these dogs. So you're not going to want to risk getting bit or doing those things if these owners aren't going to take it serious. You know what I
no,
mean? When you're this is your livelihood. You have a family. You still have to go home at the end of the day. So
I
you
need
don't
my
want to put that
fingers.
risk on your yeah. So you don't want to put that risk out there if the family's not serious. And I'm sure
Yeah,
like you're to the point too where you can vet to know when someone's serious. If they're just like, fix my dog, I want it to be perfect. And you're like, well, let's look at your dog's issue. And, like for instance, I'm going to give an issue of like dog reactivity. A lot of times people say, well, if you train my dog, it can go to the dog park and play. No, if your dog, I can get your dog to not be dog reactive, but it's never going to be dog friendly.
yeah,
So, and
yeah,
they have that
and
kind of false narrative of thinking that you're going to fix their dog and then their dog can go play.
some of these dogs we've got in, I'm like, what's the issue here? Like this dog's great, and actually, we got a report the other week, last week, of a dog that we worked with that had seen another trainer of a certain style of training that said it, you can't be fixed. Now plays with the sister's dog. They run and play together. They're great. It's not dog reactive anymore. The owners were fantastic. They reached out for a few questions afterwards, I think twice, which we always offer free support after to make sure that they're successful. And they reached out, we filled in the blanks on what things they could do better, and boom, now their dog coexists with another dog. We'll probably coexist with every dog, no, but they followed the steps on how I said to do intros and how to watch out for signs. And now the dog has a dog friend, and before the other trainer, another philosophy, said it couldn't be done. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've had other dogs too where they're like, "Yeah, your dog has to be euthanized or rehome," and we've gotten them in, and we're like, "It's fixed." It wasn't
But
that bad
also,
at all. So.
does also breed and genetics play a fact in that?
100%. If you're getting a game bred pit bull, like he's probably not going to be too dog friendly.
Yeah.
If you get a German short hair pointer and it sees a bird and it points, it's like, well, those are genetics at work. I
Yeah.
didn't teach it. So you always have to
And
keep that in mind when you're picking a certain breed of dog
is
that follows that
understanding the
breed type.
breed and what it's
Yeah.
genetically bred for. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's super
Yeah.
important. And I
Yeah.
think it's also important that you also said that like you offer support. So maybe looking for a trainer that has follow-up support. I know
Absolutely.
that there's
Absolutely.
I know that there's training programs that if you want touch-ups and things that there is extra charges for those, but
Mm.
you should be able to reach out to your trainer and have verbal conversations and support in regards to, maintaining that training. And if a touch-up is needed, then okay, hey, the dog will come back. Let's do a touch-up. But
Yep.
there should be some sort of support that's put in place after your dog leaves the facility.
I believe so, absolutely, because there is going to be a learning curve for people. We try to simplify everything down. We even write it out, and we always offer support. I'm like, you have any questions, reach out sooner than later because I want to fix it now. Well, it's fresh in my mind with the dog, and before anything becomes
Yeah.
undone.
We talk about potential things that can happen when a dog is in training, like common things that
Yeah.
happen after the dogs leave their owners and they're in your care.
Yeah. Well, generally, usually a lot of nothing that's of any concern, but things that can happen in any boarding facility. Um, I see occasionally we get dogs that will stress lick a bit of their paw. I see that from time to time. We have multiple anti-lick sprays on hand to see which one will work if a dog does that. But, sometimes that happens. I had my own dog do it before when I moved. So,
Yeah.
it can happen to any dog. Sometimes dogs will have loose stool, so diarrhea. Again, it can happen anywhere. Some dogs get it just from the car ride, but that can happen. Usually, again, if any of these things happen, we reach out to the owner if we're concerned and let them know. If we see the licking, we'll let them know, hey, we saw some licking, we're dealing with it. We're going to try these sprays, and hopefully that gets under control. And the fur will grow back usually in 2 3 weeks once they go home anyway. As far as diarrhea, we generally don't reach out unless it happens for like a couple of days, like 2 days or something like that. One day, no big deal. It happens. My own dogs will get it for a day and then they're fine.
Mhm.
We have lots of tactics to try to help with it, but yeah, if it happens, we'll reach out, let them know, and if there's any concerns, we'll definitely reach out. Sometimes they bark a bit for the first day or two because they're not used to being anywhere but home, and generally they calm down. If we're ever concerned about it, we'd reach out to the owner for ideas that we would use to help calm them down. But generally, most dogs calm down after a day or two, just new environment, right? And they're not used to a boarding facility. Ones that have been boarded at multiple boarding facilities before, usually never an issue. You know, they got it. They've done it before.
Yeah.
Those are always concerns. Now, if we see a dog that's, occasionally too, you get a dog that might not, a nervous dog, may not eat for, a couple of days or something like that. We provide the food. Sometimes we know kinds of tricks to get them eating again. But if it doesn't work, again, we reach out to the owner to say, hey, this not working. We're going to try these things to get them work. Most dogs, like 9 times out of 10, they pick up and start eating, but occasionally you get a hard one. Often those ones often have poor eating habits at home with their owners anyway. So
Yeah.
it's not uncommon, but if they're a fearful dog, those are things that can happen. Again, not all the time, just from time to time it can happen. That being said, dogs come in occasionally, even dogs that we've trained and we're just boarding, but we've had dogs come in and 2 weeks later they poop out a sock. Now, they didn't get a sock from us.
Yeah.
It's not possible. So it's always we try to watch the stool because if a dog had an obstruction and it came in with the obstruction, it could die.
That can be fatal.
It could
Yeah.
be fatal, and
Absolutely.
it's nothing I've done. I've seen dogs poop out hair bands. We've seen one of your dogs that you took in from a
Yep.
rescue, Bowser, who had a tennis ball that he started pooping out, and luckily
Yep.
was noticed and got
No,
him in.
I think he puked it up.
Yeah.
because that was a little bit ago. But that was the main reason why I wanted to do this video, because now going back to what happened with that other trainer, we don't know the circumstances of how that dog died. But I felt that there was some relation, because there could have been a chance that one of our dogs we sent to you could have walked in the kennel and he was dead. That
Yep.
didn't necessarily mean you did anything. But what I wanted to touch on was there was so much protocols and steps that was taken to basically prevent, I think, from that happening. Because I remember, like, I do speak to your wife frequently, and I know the first thing was, hey, Bowser, mind you, is super food motivated. I think the first thing was like, hey, he didn't eat today, which is kind of weird because he loves his food. So we're just watching him, but they know your wife noticed it. She let me know. And then the second thing was, I noticed him straining a little poop today. He's kind of off, but these all happen within a couple of hours. So we're doing the typical, Kate, let's watch him for 24 hours type thing. And then she called me and said, hey, he puked up and there was rubber in his puke. I'm not comfortable with this. I think he might have an obstruction.
Yeah.
So immediately we made like the rescue arrangements to get him to emerge. And I was like, because best case scenario is if he doesn't have an obstruction, we do the x-ray. Yay, great. He's fine. We continue to monitor him. Or worst case scenario, we do the x-ray and and we did. So we did the x-ray. And he had a half a tennis ball in him.
Yeah.
And what the doctor said was that it was in there for weeks, because he obviously had access, which the shelter said they gave them, balls and blankets in their kennels.
Which is
So
never
he
a good
obviously,
idea.
which is not a good thing. And that's why I also like your training facility, because the dogs don't get anything in their kennel. So I know for a fact, A, that ball wasn't in there. B, I already knew he had that at the shelter. And C, I also know the balls that you use, the rubber, and you're on the same page as me. We both don't like tennis balls because the
Yeah.
material's dangerous for dogs. So I knew, anyways, where it came from. But when we did the X-ray, she said, because there was a chunk that kind of looked like a half moon. It was like half of the ball. So
Yeah.
she said it was probably in there for a while, and then it shifted to a point where it actually came from like a obstruction to like a full blockage.
Yeah.
So when it shifted from, I guess, days of him just eating food and it moving along inside of his intestine, it got to a point where it was a full blockage, and he was actually critical. So
Yeah.
if you and your wife didn't communicate to me and we didn't take action that night, there is a chance you could have walked in the kennel probably within 24 hours and he could have been flatlined on the ground.
Yeah. It could
Now,
happen.
and this is why we want to talk about that, because you guys were so responsive in communicating to me, and we made that because, like, I didn't know. We were all, kind of blindsided when we seen that. But I look back at it and think, man, if you guys never paid attention, or if you guys never communicated to me, I would have got that call saying your dog is dead
Yeah.
in the kennel. And you could have been in the same position as this other trainer, where people are like, you killed the dog, you did this, but you
Yeah.
really didn't do anything. You literally
Right.
took a dog into your care to offer a service that came to you with already an obstruction that nobody knew about. So,
Yeah.
so I kind of sympathize in a way, because if the dog was to die in your care, you could have been blamed for that, or felt horrible, and you had nothing to do with it, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the risk you also take as a trainer, is dogs can come in with medical issues, and you do your best to say, hey, like, do you do the vets? Do you do everything? And we did have the dog at the vet and everything, but we're not just going to randomly do an x-ray if there's no
Exactly.
clinical signs. If
Yeah.
there's no clinical signs or anything like that. And he was happy-go-lucky. He loved everybody. He was
Yep.
such a good guy. And then all of a sudden you're like, and I think that helped us too, because he had such a bubbly personality that we were
Yeah.
like, something's off. It's a good topic for us to talk about, because me, as now, mind you, we got him from the shelter. He came right from the shelter in, so we didn't have much history on him. But it's also my responsibility, because you know we don't really know what we're getting into when we send those dogs to you. Now, I
No.
know an owner will have a little bit more history, but like you said, you've had a dog that pooped out a sock and you have to call the owner right away, but you
Yeah.
have no idea that it's in there. So there's those risks that comes on both sides. But the protocols that was taken, I felt, was so important, and that's what saved his life.
Yeah.
Because if nothing was communicated, sorry, I have the hiccups. If nothing was communicated, that x-ray would have been taken, and who knows how long he would have had,
Yeah.
because he already had it in him for, what, I think at that point it was, what, 2.5 weeks that
Yeah. I
he
think
sat with
even
that
longer.
obstruction.
Yeah. It was a while.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. For
yeah,
us, basically, as soon as we see a dog again, like acting funny, like happy go lucky, all of a sudden not eating for more than a meal or two, or just any behavior that seems very uncommon, we will email the client, we will call the client, right away as soon as we see some stuff. If it was like we're not 100% sure, he looks pretty good, we'll send an email. Sometimes if I'm more worried, I'll call them right away. But
Yeah.
basically, we reach out to the client right away as soon as we see something that we're like, this is a little bit not good. We've had it before, some dog might just have gas. It could happen, right? But I'd rather
Yeah.
be safe than sorry because
Of
it's not
course.
my dog and I'm doing the very best to make it's your dog. This is what I'm seeing. What would you like to do?
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. If you want to wait, we can wait. If you want to take him in, you take him in. Or if I'm like, this is beyond me, you need to take him in. You
Yeah.
know, we had
And I think we
Willow.
kind of knew. I think we kind of knew with Bowser because you had him for a little bit to the
Yeah,
point where we knew his personality that you guys right away were like, this isn't like him. Something's off.
yeah,
But when that little piece of rubber came out, we were like, nope, X-ray, let's do this.
yeah,
And that was really good to talk about because there was those steps of communication. If I was to say to you, oh well, let's wait until the morning. I mean, if he did die of that obstruction, that's on me because I didn't take that action. Now
yeah.
we're both kind of on the same page when it comes to the animal's care. So as soon as you said, "Hey, that's not," we were like right on it. But it's a possibility could happen. You could take in a dog and everything's going well, and if it drops dead because it has a sock inside it or something,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily fair to you. And it doesn't mean also that the owner is a bad owner. It's just things can happen.
It can happen. It's an
It's
animal.
yeah, it's a living being at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Just like you could have a heart attack and drop tomorrow,
yeah,
you're a living being too, right? So it can happen to anybody, but it's the protocols and steps that goes into place. Like if you were to say, "Hey, we noticed for 2 weeks he's not eating and
yeah,
he dropped a cement," like why didn't you tell me that 2 weeks ago? Do you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like that
100%.
communication was factor to save his life. Right?
Communication is very, very important, like you say. So, yeah,
And
the
documenting it as well and having that documentation, the time frame too, because I think when I talked to Sarah, now mind you this happened a little while ago, so she was like, hey, this morning or by the like there was kind of that timeline to show what was
yep.
happening with those behaviors, so there was really good documentation and timeline for us to like really figure out what was going on with him. So another thing I wanted to touch base on is with this whole incident that happened with this dog that passed. There were some people that came forward with that other trainer saying their dogs were completely emaciated upon pickup. Now, I know that weight loss can be a thing. My question that I want to ask you is at what point, if a dog is losing too much weight, do you intervene, or what is a normal weight loss if a dog is stressed when they come into your facility?
It really depends. Like I say, if we see a dog's not eating, we're going to reach out to the owner, and let them know. We do weekly updates with our clients too. So every week we do an email, just keeping everyone in the loop of what's going on with training wise and how the dog's doing, etc. Um, but yeah, if we're like, hey, it's been a couple days, not really eating. Again, we know lots of little tricks and stuff to get them eating, things to get them spice up the appetite. But if everything we're trying is not working, I'm gonna be like, hey, like I am at my wit's end. I'm not sure what to do here. That really doesn't happen too often, but occasionally, like a dog will have diarrhea and then they start eating and then they'll get diarrhea again and then they lose weight because they can't really keep the food in, and then finally you get them all caught up, and then it takes a bit of time to get the weight up because if you start feeding them a little bit more, boom, diarrhea. So you have to like
Yeah.
slowly add their food so they can get weight on. So I mean that can happen, not too often, but that can happen. Or like a dog comes in, pretty lean and it happens really quick, especially dogs with, like really fast metabolism.
At what point do you say, hey, you got to pick up your dog? Like
Well, when I get to
it
a
needs to
point
go to a doctor.
when I go for multiple days where they don't eat and or they're starting to look rough and I can't figure out a solution even. But
Yeah.
occasionally, like if I'm trying everything, I will let the owner know. And some owners are like, "Hey, just keep working at it." I understand. Just keep working at it. They want me to keep trying different things, and that's fine. But if they're like, "Hey, we want to get the dog back," I'm like, "That is fine too. I understand." Like, I leave it in the owner's hands to decide what to do with their animal. Again, I'm here for
Yeah.
training, and it sucks if I have to deal with some of that stuff because I just want to work with behavioral cases, like fix your
Yeah.
issues, but it's a side thing of the business that we have to deal with that not everyone knows about.
I do want to touch on the fact when going into talking about when dogs are stressed, you did say that if you're noticing that a dog's overstressed, you try to move it from other dogs, like try different things to decrease the dog's stress level. And I thought that was actually a really good thing to touch on because, yeah, like if, simple as, like you said, your dogs can't see each other because you have walls, but maybe another dog's energy or jumping beside it might trigger the other dog's stress. So moving them or figuring out different ways to decrease that dog's stress.
Uh-huh.
Because I think that, there was a lot of trainers, there was back and forth going, well, dogs are stressed when they come in there. It's okay. Yes, dogs are stressed, but at what level are we just allowing them to be stress bags? Like,
Yeah.
can we try and help decrease that stress level so you have a better, efficient training and sessions with them because they're not strung out wired?
Yeah, we try to make sure that if, two dogs are side by side, seem to always bark, seem to feed off each other from barking, then we separate them because they'll be stressing other dogs out. Yeah, we try to do everything we can do um, to make them as comfortable as can be. Yeah, but again, you shouldn't. Some boarding facilities like to give them like a physical beds and all the toys, and and the dog eats it. Where do you go from there, right? So my goal is to
Well,
keep them
you also
safe
have
and
to take
sound.
the liability. You have to take the liability point of it. Like, it's not a hotel. That's, I think, what a
Yeah,
lot of people don't realize when it comes to training is you're sending your dog for training. So we're not going to give you beds, blankets, and pillows.
yeah,
It's not a boarding. Your dog's not going to a hotel where you're on a vacation. Your dog's here for training. So I don't want your dog to ingest that blanket.
yeah,
And I know that you have had some clients upset saying, well, why can't I bring my dog's blankie? And that's our policy. We don't have anything in our kennels
yeah,
when our dogs are inside of it. And then I think that's respectable,
yeah,
especially with what I went through with Bowser, knowing
yeah.
how that can escalate very quickly and become very serious.
Yeah, like we have dog cots. We have big, thick rubber mats, so they can be comfortable. So they're doing the most as we can to keep them comfortable. But the most important thing is safe. That's
Yeah,
the
safe.
biggest thing, right? Because that's our goal is to make sure they're safe and focus on what they're here for is all the training. So yeah, these things can happen, but we try our best to make sure the dogs are comfortable and remove as much stress as possible.
So just to kind of summarize everything we talked about, so like when we're talking about a training facility, you want to look for a facility that is licensed by the municipality that it resides in,
Yep,
because the municipality will have its own code for kennels,
yep,
sizes, ventilation, heating and cooling. So
yep,
if they don't have a license, they most likely don't meet those requirements. So it's important to have that license,
mhm,
insurance, to ensure for obviously liability,
yep,
as well as an adequate setup for the animals that is a safe environment for them. Like you said, if the dog is stressed, learning how to lower the stress to the best of your ability.
yep,
It might not 100% decrease the stress for the dog, but at least trying different things
yep,
to make it easier for the dog. Communication when things are happening, proper communication to your client, documentation, not only for your safety and protection, but also for the owner. So you have timelines. So you have a timeline. So you have that to show. So, you can look at the bigger picture. If the dog needs to go to medical or anything, all that information is available
yep,
and documented. You also have security cameras in your facility, to be able to attach to your phone. So if you're not in the facility and something's happening, you can check in on the dogs. The dogs have, footage to be able to have that available. If in the case something was to happen, you know what's going on at all times.
yep, yep.
Um, and what else did we talk about? Expectations, basically, for what your trainer can and can't do when it comes to your dog's behavior, the expectations from the trainer, as well as the expectations from the client that's looking for training, and knowing what's going to be best suited for both parties. I think this was a really good conversation to have, just because, when this was happening, I did see in the comments people are like, I'm never going to send my dog to training, or it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault. And I think
Yep.
training is a valuable tool to
Yep.
really help families, keep dogs in homes, to work through the behaviors that are happening. And I don't think that one incident should root it for all, but I do think that all
No.
parties should take from this to be able to learn from it, and have better education out there to know what are we looking for. So then also people that are looking for trainers are getting the right trainers and
Yep.
not setting their dogs up for failure with these, pop-up trainers that are, making everybody look bad.
Yeah, and again, like hundreds and thousands of dogs go through training a year and they're fine. So they're all fine. We've had some of your dogs for lengthy periods, and they're completely
Yeah,
fine. Nothing is wrong with them. Everything is good. You know, so it's not like it's a common thing, but it
no.
just covering everything that could possibly happen, and these things
Yeah,
can happen at home. Any one of these issues could happen at home. That's why, like,
100%.
dogs are at the vets all the time, and then most of the time they're from being at home, something happening, not
Yeah,
at training. So,
yeah,
it's not a
exactly.
common thing by any means, but it can happen just like anything. So, yeah, it's good to
But
make
even
sure you
with
cover
our
all your
experience that
bases.
we had, but even with our experience that we had with Bowser that we touched on, we also had Willow that
Yep.
was with you guys, and she was fine. She didn't have an obstruction, but her health declined. And then when we rushed her to the hospital, she had cancer that nobody knew about.
Yeah,
So,
full blown.
life, yeah, and we had to do end of life care because it spread so fast around her body
Yeah,
that like it shut her down. Nobody knew that.
no.
And that's part of health of, you had this dog that was amazing, and then, within 3 days just really declined out of nowhere.
Yep.
And then when we took her to the vet, she had cancer. How
Yeah.
are you to know that when she came in the door? How did I know that?
No
So
one,
it's
right?
not fair, if she was to pass in your care for me to put you on a pitchfork and
Yeah.
say you did something wrong when she was, came with cancer. That and dogs hide illness. That's one thing, is hide dogs hide illness so well.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I'm not saying that that other dog that died, it was an illness, and I'm not saying that there wasn't fault in the trainer. We don't know that situation. That's not what this is about. But it's a topic to say that things can happen,
yep.
and it can be beyond anybody's means. It can be completely out of control, out of anybody's control. But the communication that we had is what was able for us to identify it and be able to deal with it before it got to the point of you walking into the
Yeah.
kennel and seeing a dead dog on the ground. But I think it was important to talk about because I could relate to the situation where, hey, we had a few close calls, and it was nobody's fault. It was just lifing.
Yeah.
But the communication was what was able for us to identify it. The communication, the timelines and things like that was such a huge factor for us to make the right decisions. Even for me as the rescue who had the dogs there, to make the right choices. I appreciate you coming on here to talk about that, because it's not really from a biased opinion of people giving their 2 cents of saying this and that. It's like, hey, we've been there. Like, we actually were in a
Yeah.
situation that could have really went sour, and it didn't. And I'm so grateful that I have such a supportive training team, and that we have that good trust and communication to know, hey, if something's wrong. And just like if you give me advice, if you're like, hey, can you mind if I change the food or something? I trust your judgment because we
Yeah.
have that good communication and stuff. I trust your judgment and recommendations because we have such good communication and, things like that, that there's never ever been an issue.
No. Oh, and we'll keep it that way.
Yes, for sure. So thank you for coming on here. I really appreciate it. I think if there's any questions that anybody has in regards to training and stuff, they can reach out to you directly.
Sure.
If they have those questions, or they can reach out to me. But I definitely think that there everybody can learn from this situation. And whether it's trainers out there that maybe don't have the state of the art facility as of yet, maybe they can take from this and say, hey, how can I make it better to prevent myself from being in that issue? And then dog owners who are putting their dogs in training can say, hey, how can I prevent from certain things happening, and knowing what to look for when they want to put their dogs in training.